Welcome to the Uniformer News Roundtable, where industry insiders from the Network Association of Uniform Manufacturers and Distributors break down the latest headlines, trends, and stories shaping the world of uniforms and workwear.
Hello, welcome to the Uniformer. I'm Rick Levine, Executive Director of the NAUMD, and this is our news episode, our news roundup for the month. So with me here today are my fellow columnists. Why don't you introduce yourselves, please? Aileen?
So I am Eileen out from the Netherlands, and yes, I am a columnist for the NUMD for the Pulse, and I am a writer, a speaker about workwear, and I have my own blog, prettybusiness.nl in Dutch and prettybusinessworld.com, and you can also find me on social media with the same names.
Great. Leslie?
Sure thing. I'm Leslie McArdle. I also am a columnist at the NAUMD, as well as I'm still working in the uniform field. I'm currently a director at Fabian Group, merchandising, design, production, but my entire career has been in this industry, and I love talking about it.
Yay! All right. So the format of this is we're each bringing each month two news items or topics, doesn't have to necessarily be quote unquote news, to this conversation. Each of us do not know what the two topics that we're bringing, so we're going to get some honest reactions to what's going on. Prior to turning on record, we were actually talking about PFAS for like a split second. And my first article for today is that it was news when the East Providence fire department here in the US announced that they were becoming the first US company they believed to, or department they believed to be PFAS-free for their turnout gear. So in the Pulse, we published it with that headline of they're the first. Maybe I'll hear from other suppliers that, no, we had this other department that was PFAS free. So one of the suppliers on it is an NAUMD network member and that's Milliken. Milliken is a monster-sized textile company, global, but they do so much within the space of uniforms and workwear and military here in the U.S. And have for many decades. So I was very pleased to see that. And I know that they've had initiatives to be PFAS free with their textiles for quite some time. So this is the first news, though, for a firefighter and their turnout gear, which is significant because the performance level of those materials, as you can imagine, has to be so high that to go without the certain chemicals that were until recently, the best in breed for outerwear. And what am I trying to think of, Leslie? For the water repellency.
Oh, I was just gonna,
Um,
okay, yes, definitely,
y-
because you need both. Absolutely.
yeah. So that was, so it's this East Providence, and then the mayor spoke up, and the fire chief, and everyone was talking about it. And they reset 125 full-time firefighters with 170 sets of turnout gear for
Wow,
$658,000. So
nice.
US. So that was kind of interesting. I don't know. What do you think?
From my perspective, I think it's great to start seeing it coming that way because if I understand correctly, that, as you explained, performance level has to be the highest of everything. And to find out that we really can manufacture this type of product without PFAS is huge to me. And I think it's exciting and hopefully, I'm sure it's expensive, but hopefully as with everything over time, costing can come down as it's more, mainstream. But
Yeah,
what do you think?
turnout gear is very expensive. So I don't even know if
Exactly.
$650,000 for 175 sets is a lot or not. I mean, maybe
I think
that's
it sounds a lot.
yeah.
Maybe interesting for the people who are listening and don't know what PFAS is to explain it.
Oh God.
Or am I saying something
No, you're
strange?
not saying something crazy. So PFAS stands for the hair and polyfluoroalkyl substances. So they're called the forever chemicals. These are the things that we're monitoring. The scientists are monitoring for, potential harmful effects on humans in a variety of products and ways. And in the uniform industry and in the clothing industry, it applies for consumer products as well. There were some fluorine products that are related to DWR, to the
Yeah, the water is the big one.
right. So durable water repellency. And so Gore-Tex is the classic example of a company that has, products that we're all putting into our consumer products and in our uniforms and workwear that are related to water repellency. And but they have determined that some, like a few parts out of a billion, potentially could be harmful to humans. And so it's become this big thing over the past 10, 15 years as they try to research it to remove them from our products or to figure out alternatives. It has come to a bit of a head here in the US because there's lots of laws at a state level that are being enacted to force companies to take it out of our clothing, to take it out of all kinds of actual products, not just clothing. So, so so for instance, out of cookware would be another example, a household example of where these chemicals might be placed. And it's not all PFAS. PFAS is like a gloss term. There's some very specific chemicals that are the culprits. Um,
Correct.
so that's the high level view. So is that not discussed as much at the moment, Aileen, in your world?
No, no.
Okay.
Big topic. As far as I know, I don't know everything, but from what I've seen, no. I of course I see the news and I read a little bit, but it's not a big thing here in the Europe or the Netherlands. No.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Aileen, what do you have for us today?
Yeah, so I was curious if you're ever seen wrist warmers in uniforms.
No,
No?
Wrist
like
warmers.
wrist.
Warmers. Something
Interesting.
you put on your wrist from wool. That's not common, right?
Correct. Not
Yeah.
that I've seen. No.
No. Okay. So I thought maybe you've seen it, but I saw that Air Greenland has a new uniform, which is looking very formal, but they chose to have wrist warmers. And I think that was very interesting. And it was triggering my mind like, I've never seen this before. Especially not with uniforms that are looking so formal, jackets and pants who are looking very corporate. And what they did is that they chose to make wrist warmers out of, I think, wool. They made it in Greenland and they put some dots on it. And the dots are also inspired by their logo because their logo also has dots. But yeah, it's really interesting. They also made a pattern with the dots that is looking like ice because of course Greenland is a country with a lot of ice. And they also got inspired for this wrist warmer by the national costume. So I was looking at their national costume, and it's, in my opinion, amazing, by the way. But they have this like big, it looks like big wool sweaters. And sometimes they are so long, it's even a dress. It's made of wool with a lot of patterns of flowers and dots and colors on it. And I thought it was so interesting that they chose to use wrist warmers with this the small dots that is still referred, to their national custom. I think that was really interesting.
I
Oh,
have never heard of that. And I'm also a little fascinated by this concept of national costume. I've also never heard of that.
You have never heard about national custom?
No.
oh,
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I think in America, you don't have that, but there, in Europe, there are a lot of countries with their national custom, or let's say national. Uh, in the Netherlands, they call it klederdracht. That's a really old school
yeah.
name for national custom. And for example, they call it klompen.
Okay, Clopen.
Ever heard
Yeah.
about these are wooden shoes? That is
Oh,
also,
Oh,
okay. Sure,
okay.
sure. Yeah.
let's say, national shoes. That were the shoes that they worn many, many, many years ago, and people in some areas still wear it. And a national costume is also something that in some countries they wear it at celebrations. So some special days or holidays or something, and you have the kilt. You know the
The
kilt?
Yes,
kilt.
that's
Of
the
course,
Scotland
yes.
That's
costume then?
that is also a national custom, and you have in Germany you have Oktoberfest. You know that celebration
Yes.
day.
But I
We
only
Yeah,
know it
celebrate
via
that
beer.
in the US too.
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Well, we
Oktoberfest is
took it
an
from Germany.
example of a
Absolutely.
national custom because then they have this lederhosen,
Yeah.
uh, and the
Yep.
women who are wearing the dirndl, and dirndl is a special dress, so that's their costume. So yeah, I think that is a really nice way to, combine the culture with the uniform for Air
And
Greenland.
part of Greenland's national costume has a wristband on it, and that's specifically there for warmth. Is that, or
Yeah,
was it
yeah,
a cuff
yeah. It's
for?
called a wrist warmer, but their national custom is like totally covered because it's a country with a lot of, it's very cold there, so they're all covered with a lot of fur, a lot of times, or wool. And what they did is just to make the wrist warmer is just a small part that you see that is underneath like the coat, so you see just a small part. Yeah, I think I
Yeah,
always love it when countries are using cultures or
Yeah.
their environment to
agree.
inspire, yeah, their logos
Yeah.
or
So I think our national costume, though it's not talked about, would be like a torn t-shirt and torn jeans in a lawn chair, with a beer. So,
And I think that could be close to what it is.
well, a national custom is, but let's say something they wore like 2, 3, 400 years ago.
hmm. Well, we
So
ain't that
Okay.
old. So
if that's the case,
agreed.
That's
All right. I love
interesting.
that. Leslie,
I
what do
love
you
that
got?
too. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so what I have is this is an opinion piece, and it's a little close to home now in my current role. Is I read an opinion piece from a Pennsylvania, like local, the Night Crier or something like that, of public school uniforms. Now, I grew up wearing a school uniform. I went to private school. So I did. So I have a strong opinion that I think it's a great idea. And there's reasons, they give, and school uniforms are uniforms, right? So, in the uniform industry, I feel it's a good thing. And I know Europe already might do it. And I'm interested in like what your thoughts are, because it really does level out the playing field because you're never going to get rid of bullying ever, right? It's just a fact of life. But if everyone is uniformed and the same, and it's also less stress of what am I going to wear the next day, da 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 da, things like that. And it's consistency. And I think consistency is huge in learning. And, they also have a little like caveat like, oh, does it take away individuality? And I don't believe it does because there's a lot you can do to showcase who you are as a person versus the exact clothing you put on. So I'm curious of your thoughts. And it's really more of an opinion it's really more directed in the United States. Like, some school systems might do it, but the majority don't. And I feel it's a great idea to really put forth to have that done.
Aileen, I'll let you go first.
Well, I've read a lot of research about this topic. I am not very pro, I am not very against it.
Okay.
But from science perspective, what you say, that is an opinion that a lot of people say these
Yeah.
days. But it is based on very old research. There has been
Okay.
new research done a couple of years ago, and that's because the youth, of course, is changing. So in the past, yes, it was the case. There was less bullying. There was a better atmosphere. It was just better for the whole community. But they found out from research that it didn't make a difference if you have a school uniform or not. And that's because the young people, it's different from now or 20, 30 years ago. People now, if you look at the young people, they are so much more aware about, let's say, gender roles and gender
Fair.
in general, because you see now that a lot of young people are going against the uniforms, not because they don't want to wear it, but because of the gender roles that comes with it. I mean, there has also been research done about school uniforms for young girls, that it's not always that good for exercisement, for living free. Of course, you have so many different kind of uniforms,
That's yeah.
but it is, let's say, I think, of course, there will always be school uniforms, but if it's just only good against bullying, I don't think in this area of time, I don't think so. Especially, it's just a different time.
Very valid points. Rick, what do you think?
Wow. So I mean, it's a big topic. It's been around a long time.
Yes.
There's also a difference between a dress code and a uniform, right?
Valid,
There's
yeah.
the concept of no, you have to wear this specific apparel, right? Or you have to go to Walmart and buy a white shirt and navy pants, right? And we don't care what the white shirt and the navy pants are. So, and I can understand research being done in both directions and showing different things. What I think is interesting from our industry's standpoint on school uniforms uh, is providing intention and messaging surrounding the clothing. And I think that if it's done properly, it could still do all of the things that we feel uniforms do for a association, for a government agency, for a company, right? So there are, I think, achievable goals that a school could uh, have associated with uniforms if they're going into it with that concept. If they're just going into it um, for one thing, then yeah, it's
Right.
probably going to be evidenced that it's not solving that one thing, right? But if building a team, if giving a sense of equality, if giving if you're providing the right messaging with all of it, I think it could be quite an effective tool for the school to have the group come together as a group, as a community with pride, right? Why, if uniforms aren't an effective tool for building team, then why do we put our athletic teams in uniforms? Why not just go tell them to buy shorts and an athletic t-shirt at
Right.
Walmart, right? We don't. We give them specific uniforms so that they can be identified easily from each other, that they can feel as a cohesive group. And I think that's still validity. There's still validity in that, whether or not, you know, these studies are showing that it does this or does that. There's just that sense. So that's my instinct on it. But I could totally understand why communities rail against it. Totally
Well,
understand that.
Yep.
I think it's also a big cultural thing.
Mm,
There is a lot of influence because they did an experiment at the beginning of this year in France with school uniforms,
Okay.
because president said, I want school uniforms just to try, and school can sign up for that. So there were a lot of schools, but there were a lot of problems because some schools said, okay, I want it, but only the jackets, only the pants. And there was a lot of discussion. And I think that if, from a cultural perspective, you're used to that, it's the same with, you said, the football team. You used to, when you are a team in a football, it's normal to wear the same sport outfit. It's just normal. You're a group, so the people are used to it. People don't make they don't have this much discussions. But if you're not used to it, people, I mean, here in the Netherlands, people will go crazy. No one wears a school uniform because at the first moment you even say at work that there's a dress code, people get mad.
Mm.
They're all like, oh, I want to be myself. I cannot be myself. And that's the same story with school uniforms. And I think it's a big cultural thing. If you're grown up with school uniforms, it's totally normal. You don't get discussions that much. But if you don't, like in France, they stopped school uniforms many years ago and they tried to bring it back. It's harder.
That's a really good point. I'm thinking of the cliche of the Asian nations, right? The Chinese school children that, you almost never see images of school children in Asia that are not in, uniformed clothing. And it's interesting. And that's a total cultural thing, the whole idea that I am part of this, but that's worked for them for 5,000 years. So,
Well, in Asia, that's also changing the school uniform culture because more and more children are now saying, well, you should also respect some boundaries from people because they get so far that they even want to check the underwear of the children
mm,
if they have the same color, if they don't, you see them through and all this kind of stuff. And hair color must be natural. And
yeah.
if someone thinks your hair color is not natural, they can go to your parents, ask if you color your hair. It's also more and more
Very
discussions now.
interesting. Final thought, Leslie?
My final thought is that I think it's just more than just the individuality of I really believe it's all about consistency. And to your point, it doesn't have to fall into gender roles. To your point, it could even just be a polo with the branding of the school, something to identify that we're a group, here's the school. And I mean, it'd be great for the economy, for all the local doing that, team apparel is huge, as you mentioned. And I think it
Mm.
can transcend into what kids wear to school.
Very interesting. So that segues into my second one, which
Oh,
is
we didn't plan that.
which was his color, right? The idea of color and longevity and culture and heritage. So the city of Philadelphia has had two generations now of people for 50 years that have seen their law enforcement professionals wearing what is called powder blue. I don't know that the law enforcement professionals would call it powder blue, right? But it's been this kind of powder blue color, which was very popular for a few decades as a shift away from a more, aggressive or more, standoffish or more tactical, look. Like we were softening up our law enforcement and public safety professionals here in the US. And powder blue became, a part of that. And Philly has used it, Philadelphia, the city of Philadelphia Police Department has used it forever. Well, they just announced, without photos, they've announced that they're going to a midnight navy in the fall, and that they're working with their suppliers, and they're going to have everyone switching over. And So it's a big deal, and they're spending, again, the numbers were published in this case, because these are public agencies. So $1.3 million is going to be spent to retool the color of the shirts into a midnight navy. And a midnight navy has also become hugely popular in law enforcement, as even black has become very popular as a color. And we're moving back towards this darker, more serious, more, you know. So I wrote in that article this week for Uniform Duty, which is what I'm going to call our new column about public safety, that, the research indicates that light blue is perceived as calming and friendly, and that dark blue signals strength and authority. And so they've got, hundreds. I don't even know if I quoted it in the article, but they have a pretty big police department. So it's big news when a city the size of Philadelphia does a complete color shift for their public safety law enforcement professionals. Um, I don't know. Thoughts on the shift in color?
Well,
That's
my initial instinct is I like the darker color as that strength, as you mentioned, and that does give that. And I also think there's a lot more about darker colors too, of how they react to the weather outside and the protection to your skin and things like that. But I feel it's a good move for them. And I think in general, when I think safety, security, police, my mind does go darker. But again, that's just a general opinion.
Mhm.
I find it interesting that it's such a big topic, and that intrigues me a little bit of, how that has to be announced or whatnot. But I suppose it does in that sense. I don't know, Aileen, does that really matter when the type of, in your police or whatnot over in Europe or?
Yeah, it's a big, big, big thing.
Yep.
But to be honest, it's not just with police, it's with every uniform. I've seen that over the years. Every time when there is a shift when it comes to uniforms, if it's for, let's say, public safety uniforms or like big, let's say, McDonald's or other companies, color is always a big thing. And yeah, it's on one side a personal preference, and that's because, yeah, that's also why people stay at these, safe powder blue, dark blue, or black. So as you said, if you have the influence, like psychology is also a
Yep.
thing. But I saw it on let's say, the police from Belgium. They also had a new uniform, and they chose to, let's say, kind of copy the Dutch uniform. And then there was a lot of controversy, like, oh, they have the same color, they look the same. But on the other side, choosing color is also, want to collaborate maybe with other countries because we're neighbors. And
Yes.
that's also when you look at high visibility colors, they look at what countries are friends with us. So we choose the same high visibility. So, and from the research that I have seen about colors in the police uniforms, it's also the contrast. It's general knowledge that if there's a bigger contrast between colors, let's say black and white or light blue and black, it makes a more formal look. But just my first reaction when seeing these was, okay, but with a darker color, you're looking more like authority. You're less approachable, maybe. And from my perspective, but I'm just a European watching America, so I don't know. But I thought that in America, in general, the police wanted to be more approachable, a more softer look. There were even areas where they said, we don't use uniforms anymore. We just want to be, one-on-one with the people. And so maybe this is a shift in strategy or something.
So, excuse me, I think 100% it's a shift in strategy. I don't think it's a shift in strategy as far as law enforcement in the US saying we don't want to be approachable, but I do think there has been a trend towards needing to feel more authoritative. That may be the trend you were talking about, where we wanted to be softer and let's wear polos with with badges on it that aren't metal, right? We'll wear a badge that's just an embroidered badge. And I think it is the whole movement towards a more tactical world here in the US. Our insane level of active shooters out in the, in the wild here, that is just an insane level of uh, of 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 concern for law enforcement and citizens, of course. But they're just dealing with so much that I think they're leaning back into, Aileen, I think you're right, they are leaning back into the idea that we need a more authoritative look. And I think that's what Philly and many others are responding to. I think that local policing, community policing, you're still going to find the lighter colors. You're still going to find, that. And even within larger departments, you could have, similar to how we have the ceremonial Class A dress, and maybe our everyday is the dark navy or midnight navy. But then maybe we've also even got a quote unquote third outfit of the day that is for, when I show up at community events. Maybe there's something that they're going to supply community off,
Dress.
liaisons. Very
Absolutely.
interesting, but color huge.
It is. It is. Good one.
Leslie.
Oh, okay. Well, this one is slightly different now. It is uniform, but of course I always have to. So keeping to my theme, so there was this great article, and it really was. It was in The Guardian, and it was about Generation Z. I'm very familiar with this generation. I have a couple that live with me. And what it is as they're entering the workforce, think of it as corporate world in that instance. The old days of like dressing up in the latest and greatest outfits still is present, right? But what some of this generation is really kind of doing, because it's so uncertain here, at least in this article, meaning in this country, there's layoffs, there's things that happen, and, with the tariffs and just a lot of change going on in general in the country. This generation is entering the workforce and really focusing on not like, oh, I've got the latest blazer and outfit. It's more so I want to go in and not have to worry about what I'm wearing and showing, and go consistently the Steve Jobs type of approach.
Mm.
He always wore the black shirt, the jeans, the white sneakers. I'm not saying they're going into that, but they're going like, okay, I have these set blazers, these set pants, and this shirt, however you range, and this is what I'm going to wear to the office. And it's like more of a consistency because it's stability that they're looking for, because there could be uncertainty in whatever it is in the marketplace. And there was even a fashion writer wrote about this, that it's just more conscious dressing, more focused on this is what I'm going to wear to the office, and it's consistent and it's still nice enough that, go out after work or whatnot. It's not following the latest fashion trends into what could the office be. I know it's a different type of discussion, but we have to be very mindful of what this new generation going into the workforce, how they perceive what they wear might not be historically what has been done in the past, is really the direction that I'm learning from this. And I just want your thoughts on, especially the whole, I loved that Steve Jobs approach to, if you're consistent on what you wear, your presentation and whatnot is solidified somewhat, like this is who you are. I don't know.
Well, maybe
Thoughts?
also from a sustainability point of view,
Mm.
that the new generation is more aware of the influence of fashion and workwear on
Yes.
the environment. And I also think that after the pandemic, that is also a change. That people are more aware of, like, the world we're living in, and if we want to, live in a good world. So I think that is a topic. And I think it's in general very good that people don't want to follow trends by day. I never did. I think it's exhausting. But yeah, I think that's from sustainability point of view, it's a really good thing. Yeah. But
That's
also,
great insight.
yeah, if you look at the uniform of Steve Jobs and let's say Mark Zuckerberg, I think
Yep.
that one of the reasons for Mark, I know, is that you don't have to think in the morning what you put on. And he said, the more I need to think, the less I have space in my head for other things. So it's also an easy thing to do. But keep in mind, there were some experiments with this. And I think there was an American TV presenter, a lady who did this, and she got a lot of comments. And a man who was wearing the suit, her colleague, and didn't get a lot of comments. So it's also a
Of
gender thing
course.
that as a
Absolutely.
woman, if you're wearing the same for a long time, people perceive that differently than if you're a man. The standards
100% agreed.
are
Great,
different.
great.
And I
Yes.
think that if you want to be consistent, you can also just be consistent with your style. I think that if you have, when I was working at the office, I just had the wardrobe for the office and not office. I think that if you have a consistent style, it's also just good. You don't have to wear the same every day.
Got it. Agreed, agreed. And women are toughest on each other, aren't we?
Well, I don't think it's only women. It's just I think it's society in general.
Valid
When
point, yeah.
it comes to the, how women look, I think it's just so deeply in our society that we judge women more on the base of how they look than what they say and what they do. So I think it's not only women towards women. I think it's a bigger issue.
Yeah, well, Aileen, we should be just judging women on how they look. That's
I
totally,
knew it. I knew it.
totally acceptable. Yeah, totally acceptable.
Okay, I'm checking out now. This
As
feminist
the
is checking out.
representative he, him on the meeting, I will say that. So it's an interesting topic, Leslie. And while it's not four square in the uniform, category, it's very interesting for the uniform industry to note what young people are thinking about because in essence, what you're doing is presenting a case for going to a company and saying you need image apparel, right? You don't need a uniform, but you look at what young people are saying. Look at these anecdotal evidence based pieces, and then even if as Aileen's saying, maybe there's even studies showing on how younger people are more interested in having just a consistent look and style to themselves and not overthinking their wardrobe every single day. Is that an argument for then having an image apparel program? And in a contemporary image apparel program, we're giving them six damn shirts to choose from. We're not just saying wear this one shirt. Most modern American image apparel programs, and Leslie can correct me if I'm wrong, they're offering a bunch of shirts as an option. They're not
Too many
saying
sometimes.
this is, yeah, too many sometimes, right?
Many.
And because we have suppliers like a Sanmar and an Edwards and others here in the US, it's easy for many of our industry members to just say, well, you know what? That's no problem. We'll just offer them six different polos. And
Mhm.
as long as the color is always midnight navy, then
Mhm.
then fine. Then you can pick your style, right? So it's very interesting that young people, I know for me, even on a personal note, yeah, when you're reaching for what to wear that day, you're like, oh, that's too much like what I wore yesterday, right? Or
Yes.
if I'm going somewhere, wait, did I wear that
Fun.
last time I went there? I don't know. Is anyone, and no one but your own brain, cares. But it is interesting how we think about that. And in a sense, it's kind of an argument for uniforms and image apparel, the consistency and the need to not think about what you're wearing. And interesting that relates back to your first topic, Leslie, of, well, wouldn't it be nice if kids didn't have to worry about how come, Susie always dresses nicer than I do? Am I poor? Right. So
Exactly. So it was interesting. So that's why when I read it, I was like, oh, that makes sense to me. It's not saying that it doesn't have to be fashion forward. Image apparel clearly can be, and it is. It's just that consistency that it seems like this generation, because, with social media, everything, they're just their mind. They wake up and it's social.
Well, what I see, what a young generation is wearing on TikTok, um, is that it's very controversial because
Mhm.
we're thinking that the dress code is way more, let's say, casual than it really is. So there's a lot of discussion on TikTok about what you can or cannot wear at the office, for example, crop tops, very short skirts, these kind of things. It's all about, yeah, I can wear what I want. Yeah, but can you? Or do you think you?
Valid point. Yep.
And what is good for your career and what is good for your message? And but the also we're going back to the gender roles and all these things. That's the big topic for this young generation. Like, but why can't I wear this but someone else can? This discussion thing. So yeah, I think from what I've seen, it's they're not on the same level as the former generations.
No, there, yes, agreed. And I deal with it every day. Every day. But I love it though, because I love thoughtful approaches to things. So
Yeah.
Very
it was
cool.
interesting to me when I read it. I found it intriguing.
All right, Aileen, bring us home here
Yes.
with topic number
The last
6.
Bring us
topic.
home.
Bring us home. Well, I saw something and I was very shocked by it. It was one small sentence in a report, and I'm sorry, someone is barking here. I hope he stops.
We didn't hear it.
Um,
We didn't hear it. Yeah.
oh, okay. So once a month he's barking at the office, and that happens now. So the social, and if I translate it, they call it the Social and Economic Council in the Netherlands. That's the organization that is advising the government. And the head of the organization writes every 6 months a big report about the workplace, what should change in the workplace. And this man mentioned, and I was very surprised, women's workwear, that the government needs to push more for proper workwear for women. And I think that I've seen the report, and it was a very big report, of course, with a lot of numbers. It was a very small sentence, but it was also the one thing they picked up for the press release. So it was something they really wanted to point out. And I think was really interesting because I saw this as a big shift because you're seeing this globally happening more. For example, in England, you have the Equality Act. That's since 2010. But the Equality Act says, you should treat people equally. Would mean that men get to wear work clothes for men and women for women. But now they see there's a problem that still women gets clothes that are made for men. So now they're trying to change it. In New Ontario, in Canada, they even said every company is forced to have workwear for men and workwear for women. So I think I see a big change in the world. And now I just wrote down some examples. I know there are more from that not only, let's say, the community or people are saying we want more and better workwear for women, but even the government. I think that is a thing. And I know that in America, for example, in the Defense Department, there is the rule that I have to think about the English word, but the vest that women are wearing to protect from bullets.
Yeah, a bulletproof vest. Yes.
A bulletproof vest, yeah, of course. And that is even that they're forced in the military to order it because it was one of the first inventions. It got an award from Times Magazine in 2012 that there was a bulletproof vest specially made for women.
Interesting.
And at that time they said, okay, now we can order it, but they didn't even order it. So now they even have to make a law from the government on to say, okay, we have this, you need to order it. And I think it's really interesting to see this shift worldwide, that just even governments need to say that people need to pay attention to good workwear for women. I think that's really in some way strange, or what do you think?
I 100% agree. Sorry, Rick.
No, it's okay.
And I worked for a large uniform company for most of my career. And full disclosure, it was always the afterthought, which is wrong. And we were an all women merch team, so it was really kind of cool. And we would push for it, but it would always get pushed to the side because of numbers. But to your point, you have to just like separate that out. You need to have the clothing offering for people to fit. It fits differently. I cannot wear a men's garment. It just doesn't fit. So I'm 100% in agreement. I just think that we have as a mentality to, depending on the industry, to stop thinking, it's the smaller portion of the business, because it's not in a lot of cases. In some instances, I'm thinking probably more industrial.
And it's also a big topic when you talk about safety and having the same opportunities at work, because when you're working with the wrong equipment, the wrong workwear, I've spoken to so many women who say, well, I need to work with gloves who are too big, workwear who is too big. And it's just not fair, because you cannot work as comfortable as your other colleagues. But for me, it's still in my head, it is a strange thing that the government needs to say this. What do you think about this?
And they are specifically referring to the workwear for for like industrial jobs, for this isn't like what women are wearing to work in the government. This is workwear, PPE, right? That's what they're specifically discussing.
Well, what he wrote in his report was, he said literally, and I think that was a quote, that he said, white men are used to being the norm everywhere with everything. So that meant that if the man is the norm, we need to change it, because the whole workforce is changing. So there need to be more focus on workwear for women. He didn't say a specific area, but he said white man. He is himself a white man, but he said it's just the norm, and that is something, in his opinion, was very wrong, that this is the norm while the workforce is changing.
Yeah, well, it's good news. It's good that, but it's good news that he's saying, hey, we need to pay more attention to this. It's what's been a rallying cry for a few years, a decade now, for many in the industry. Here in the US, we even have now an association of small manufacturers who are solely focused. The acronym is, they pronounce it awesome, AWSAM or something like that, and it's a dozen or so workwear manufacturers who are specifically focused on women's workwear. And there's others. I don't mean to just call them out, but so I think it's great. But and that should.
One side, if you hear that that the American government even needs to make a law that you should buy bulletproof vests for women, I'm just ashamed that is the society we live in. But we cannot just think like, okay, someone has a different body that needs to be protected on their level.
So there's a number of things that we might be ashamed of that are laws in the United States. And that one's going to be pretty low on my list, Eileen. So at the moment.
I'll stop. That's a quote, Rick. That's a quote.
That'll be the clip you pull out, Eileen.
Yeah, I know, right?
On TikTok, right?
Yeah.
So, right?
Okay,
hey,
I'll shut up.
No. I think it's great. And it's really interesting. Yeah, it's important. And I think it's really interesting that you noticed, that is even now surfacing in general economic reports, in your part of the world. And we tend to be, 5, 10, 15 years behind Europe on many topics. So I think that it will continue to,
Well,
become a thing here in the US. And depending on, for instance, if ANSI, if some of the standards start to adopt more of an approach saying, here's our recommended best practice, and if it becomes, that you have to fit the wearer's frame better than just an alpha sizing grading, then that'll be good for everyone. Well, that was an interesting roundup today. We had quite a variety of topics,
we did.
and
I really
I really appreciate the conversation with both of you today.
I did too. Thank you,
And if
everyone.
you're a listener, please vote. And we only want 5 stars, not less. And a good review,
Mic
please.
drop.